with a WCW, I think it's quite well known that they had a drug policy, which essentially extended to maybe somebody they wanted to fire specifically. But they used to drug test people, people who they were pretty sure were on something, and no one ever got popped for anything ever. I know when you were in the WWF, they did drug testing, and that at the time was actually very, very stringent. As a manager, were you party to those tests?
Oh yeah, I had to go take them. We took them about, I don't know, every 3 months. Bam Bam Bigelow one time, you know, guys that use drugs, it was just smoking dope back then, just smoking marijuana. But they could tell when you're going to test because they'd always test at right before a big show, right before a big show. So they tested one night at some show around New York City. It's what we call a spot show. They don't often run it. But the next day was New York City. So they tested for drugs. So Bam Bam Bigelow, on his to drive back, he lived in New York or outside, he lived in Connecticut. He fired him a big one up. Like, yeah, they tested tonight, so they won't test tomorrow night. So he did him about 2 or 3 joints on the way back. And the next day, going to the show, he fired him another one up, maybe 2. So he pulled into the garden, parked his car, walked in. There's a big sign on the wall, drug test tonight in room 2A or whatever. And I remember Bam Bam telling me this story. He says, hey, he said, they got me on that one. He said, I thought they wouldn't test at the garden. So that's when he said, I hadn't smoked in like 6 weeks. He said, I was dying for a joint. And he said, he went in there and I said, you failed? He said, hell yeah, I failed. And he said, what they did to him was they just took him off the cards. But he said something that I've never heard another wrestler say. He said, my opponent, that means that he was also pulled off the card, which he had nothing to do with it. And he said, I went to Vince and I said, Vince, look, I forgot who said he was working with. He had a little angle going. He went to Vince. He said, it's not his problem. I tell you what, I won't smoke. Let me just go ahead and work these shows and I'll work with so-and-so. And so he can get paid. And Vince liked it so well, that offer, that he allowed him to do it. So he said, at least I didn't penalize somebody else for my mistake, which I always thought was a good offer on his part. So actually he worked for free so the other guy would get paid.
That's a great story. Something else sort of as a follow-up, because you mentioned the sticky icky, the green, is some point in the policy, they sort of upgrade marijuana to the same as cocaine or steroids, whatever. If you're caught with marijuana, and they're obviously not the same drugs and they're not the same, life-threatening substances. But was that a huge mistake to put marijuana on the, basically smoking it would be a fireable offence? Because surely that would have made more people turn to the pills, the uppers and downers, which were far more dangerous in the long term.
Well, they just went along. They have a saying today, follow the science. Now it's legalized in a lot of states. Marijuana is, it's illegal, so they can't bust you for it. And even if they find some on you, unless it's like, they thought you were dealing, they're going to let you go. And we all knew it back in the day, but still, it was. They went by the science, what was written down in the laws, and they included it in there. I wish they hadn't have, because smoking a joint is not the same as shooting up heroin. It's not the same thing. And I think we all can agree on that now. But back then, years ago, they say you were a dope head if you smoked marijuana. Which, of course, I'm the one of the. I was the hippie crowd. So I guess we first busted the use of marijuana into the scene in the United States and the world. So but we kind of knew that. But hey, it was a policy, so to argue that would be useless.